To Snap Tackle Pod, I'm Mick Shaffer of KSHB 41. He's Dion Clisso of PrepsKC. We're back for another episode, heading into the semifinals or quarterfinals, depending on which side of the state line you were cheering for, which class, and all that stuff. Hey, we're going to break it all down before you're looking ahead and looking back here on this week's edition. What's up, Dion? No hat?
No hat this week.
You can't show sides. I mean, it's too.
I know. Yeah, it's this time of year it gets a little. I've got some teams that have been beaten that have long since.
Some teams.
Yeah, I've got some teams like that. That's the other thing too. It's like if you wear a hat and you jinx somebody, then they're not very happy about it. I have fished for some hats as well. I'll go ahead and say that Josh Korkenmeyer, if you check out the highlights of the post game interview. Great red and white stocking caps the coaches at Blue Valley West were wearing last week. Real nice. That may be top 5 that I've seen this year. Just real classic with just a W.
Well, they got that green, red, and white uniform with the stripes on the side. Good look over there at West.
Yeah. So I've put some feelers out for that. Maybe doing some horse trading on those kind of things. Talking to Korkenmeyer a little later today. We'll see what happens. But
that should be your off-season goal is to get a hat for all 100 teams.
I'd love to have a hat for all 118, 20 teams that I cover, and that would be great. But that's some people have them laying around. Some people get just enough, and some people get a box of kids hats, and that's why my kid has one from Great Valley. So
I would guess all you have to do is send an email. With your address. They're going to send it to you.
I feel bad. I don't have enough gear to trade right now, too. I'd love to be able to trade out some gear, but I just don't have enough of that right now. Like that. Very.
You have 120 of those helmets back there.
No, I don't have that. That was a free gift from Riddell. Thank you very much, Jerome Tucker, the rep. But I don't have that. The brand new KSHB the logo's barely been changed to the new blue color for a month, and you're already got looks like you've had it for 10 years.
Hey, when it's a total rebrand, man, you got to get all different clothes. So donate a lot of that 41 Action News stuff to Goodwill, and now I got the new KSHB stuff.
So we'll look to get some off-season stuff and looking to kind of, it's when we started 10 years ago, 11 years ago, this kind of your basic dry fit was kind of, now it's all the retro, Charlie Hustle type looking t-shirts. So may do something like that in the off-season. We'll see. We'll do some things and get some gear for people. We feel like we have a great logo. We like it a lot. We think it's pretty iconic, especially 11 years in. So we'll do some trading. Maybe if we do some postseason stuff, we'll have. I will say
that's
this.
for 2. By the way, I'll wear whatever.
Yes.
I have no shame.
I will say this next week, especially on the Kansas side and Missouri Class 6, assuming that Liberty North, at least on North, I would definitely wear a hat of a team playing a state championship game.
There you go.
If they're playing outside the area. So yes, I will definitely. I'm definitely open to that. So
we'll work on that. Well, hey, you mentioned Korkenmeyer. Let's start right there with Blue Valley West. I thought was maybe the best game of last weekend, taking on Shawnee Mission Northwest, a Cougar squad. And really both of these teams kind of mirrored each other this year in the EKL and the Sunflower League, and that they were kind of middle of the pack. It was easy to forget about them, but they put together good win after good win. They were playing their best football once they hit the playoffs, and it showed in that quarterfinal matchup.
Well, and two teams that had pretty good players graduate from the year before, and they still just kind of came right back. And I think it says a lot about both those coaches and their coaching staffs and the programs that they're building. And that, I think when Ty Black and the rest of those seniors from Shawnee Mission Northwest graduated last year, everyone fully expected them to kind of take a step back, and they didn't. They were right back in the same spot they were. They made it to the quarterfinals again this year, and Blake Reeder comes in from playing tight end to playing quarterback and steps right in. And they've got a junior tailback, Malik Oatis, who's had an outstanding year. He's going to be a guy to really keep an eye on for next season. Just dynamic, and almost 900 yards rushing and 700 yards receiving, and I think 20 plus total touchdowns. So and then you look at Blue Valley West, and that's a team that has really made an identity over the last few years under Josh Korkenmeyer. They're big, they're physical, they'll run the ball.
Even their quarterback's big. Gage Roach is just a big
Gage Roach. I always have to stop and pause because Gage Roach is the quarterback and Sage Huffman is the tailback. Yes. And they're both really good players, and they have they've got some good wins. They beat Raytown earlier in the season, and they beat Blue Valley 2 weeks ago, and a comeback, and then they came back against Shawnee Mission Northwest.
They hammered St. Thomas Aquinas too.
Yeah, they did. They took care of St. Thomas Aquinas.
5A.
Yeah, and then they're going to play Blue Valley Northwest for the second time, and we're seeing all over the place. It's tough to beat a team a second time, and I like their chances. I wouldn't. You just said a month ago, can Blue Valley West go to the state championship game? I'd be like, well, they could be in the mix. The bracket fell their way to where they didn't have to play Olathe North and Blue Valley Northwest. They had to beat Shawnee Mission Northwest and Blue Valley, and that maybe worked out for them matchup wise. And that we talked about it all season long that there wasn't a dominant team. Blue Valley Northwest has looked as dominant as anybody can in 6A on the west side, but it was a matchup game. It's like, who do you match up with? Where do you get them? Where do you see them? And now we've got two teams that are probably playing the best of anybody. Blue Valley Northwest just ran Olathe North off the field.
That was amazing to me.
Stunning.
I think the score at one point was 35-0 over really a defensive oriented Olathe North squad.
Yeah, and it's one, I think nobody would have been stunned if we said two EKL teams playing for the right to go to the state championship game. But at the same time, I think that Shawnee Mission Northwest and Olathe North, and then Lawrence on the other side of the bracket going up against Derby in the other semifinal, shows that the Sunflower League was pretty good too. And we talked about that before, that they were really, we thought maybe that the bottom was not good. I mean, there's 14 teams, and the bottom of that league is not good. But the middle, I think, was better than when we thought. Olathe South, won their first week and knocked out Blue Valley North. And, I think that says a lot about what the Sunflower League is. And then, of course, the EKL's got, okay, let's see here. 1, 2, 3,
five
4,
of the
5
six
teams.
left. 5 of the 6 left on the east side in 6A, 5A, and 4A from the EKL. And the other was in the EKL 2 years ago. So
Yes. It still has EKL. Kids who have played for EKL championships are still on that Mill Valley team. So it's I think the Blue Valley Northwest, Blue Valley West games, I would lean towards Blue Valley Northwest just because they beat them pretty handily in the regular season. But I'm not putting anything past this Blue Valley West team, especially the way they've come back the last 2 weeks. I mean, they looked dead in the water against Blue Valley and then just ran them out the second half. So
we'll talk about that more in the Remax Big 3 coming up. But speaking of the EKL, and we'll stay in Kansas here. St. James moves on, but as long as we're giving out attaboys, how about Piper? I mean, that was a 10-7 game in the fourth quarter, and that took, I believe, a couple of turnovers on Piper's part for St. James to eventually pull away.
There's 2 things at play here. One, they did a fantastic job in that game. And 2, St. James pulled away primarily because one of the reasons that Piper was struggling with, they had a lot of injuries. Their depth was tested. And I think St. James just kind of, in the second half, their depth was a little bit better, and they pulled away in that game. And I think Piper and Eudora, who lost 21-6 to Bishop Miege, I know they don't want any moral victories for teams against the Catholic schools, but I think that those 2 programs have shown that the gap is not as wide as it used to be. That being said, St. James looks like they could be good for a while. And so maybe they've stepped into the Miege spot. But I think what Eudora did and what Piper did and what some other schools have done this year shows that, and I'm going to say this as nicely as I can, instead of complaining about the situation and basically unintentionally telling your kids you have no chance to compete, and some just come out and saying it to your kids, you have no chance to compete, try and go and compete.
Yeah.
And try and win a game. And I think if you get rid of the rhetoric, and it's only going to get worse next year when Aquinas comes down, if you get rid of the rhetoric, you might find that your kids play and will pull off and win some games, because when you tell them they can't win, guess what? They don't think they can win. Yeah. And there's a lot of that going around. And I think that's a huge problem. And I don't want to go too deep down that, because there's been some coaches in some post games who have used that. And yes, is there a talent disparity? Yes, there is. Is it fair? Should there be a success multiplier? I say, yeah, probably. It seems to be working on the Missouri side. If that's the case, then let's do it. But telling your kids you can't compete, you might as well then don't suit up.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. And what's it matter? I'm sure there's people who go, we can't compete with Mill Valley. And does that help them in any way?
Yeah. No.
I mean, you're not a private school, but you guys are churning, Mill Valley's churning out winners year after year after year. So, all right, I'm done with my rant. I'm just, that had been frustrating me.
I mean, they should go the other way and say, hey, look, it's possible, right?
Yeah, it is possible. And so I think that, and Baser was really good this year too. And matchup wise, that wasn't good for them to be playing St. James in a second round game. And they, but at the same time, I don't hear, there's certain groups of people that I hear complaining about we can't compete, and I heard other ones saying don't say it at all. And so, it is what it is.
It is, and look, I think the Chiefs' defense is turning it around. I think St. James fans are thrilled by that, and that Matt House, okay, stay in town, Matt House, so your son stays in town next year, Jackson House, to be quarterback, because I mean he's had a heck of a year.
Yeah, that being said, I don't think Andy doesn't run his assistants out. He doesn't flush guys that often. So I think he was probably good for at least one more year. But no, and hey, the linebackers look better, so that's his position group too.
Exactly.
So that helps. So that helps. But
thank you, Nick Bolton.
Yes, Nick. We miss you, Nick Bolton, is what I would say.
Missouri does.
He was we found out real quick he was our defense last year. No, I think that Jackson House has done a great job, and Nissen and Tyler Claiborne are fantastic receivers. The tailback, who I don't know his name off the top of my head, has just been really good and steady for them. And the funny thing about it is, and I joked with Coach Pollard from Piper last week. I said, last year St. James' offensive line was okay. I mean, they did a pretty good job, but they got the ball out. Dakota Burke got the ball out quick, and they got it to the receivers, and they had Jimmy White back there who could make a bad offensive line look good, and they did. This year, their offensive line is much better. So it's, they don't, I mean, Jimmy made up for a lot. And we talked about this. There's the one scene from the state championship game where he's pinned in 15 yards behind the line, and it turns into a 60-yard touchdown run. So they aren't needing quite as much of that this year on the offensive line. I think that's their line on scrimmage on both sides is really what the difference maker is for them.
Watts might be the running back you're thinking of for St. James. Yeah. All right, let's switch over to the Missouri side here, Dion. And speaking of good games, what happened in the Grain Valley Raytown game? My goodness, 3 overtimes, right? Because it stinks, the timing of it all, of 7 o'clock games and 10 o'clock sports shows, to where a lot of times we're not there at the end. We just can't. And we have cameras getting multiple games and all that stuff, and people bouncing around. So you don't always see the great finishes. It stinks. I wish we could figure out a way, maybe we will soon, to see those. But that appeared to be an epic finish.
So that was the last one to finish on Friday night. For those who don't know, I live basically a stone's throw away from the Grain Valley city line in Blue Springs. And it is, depending on the light, just as fast for me to go to Grain Valley High School as it is to go to Blue Springs South High School. As it went to overtime, it was the last game, and my nephew, who was doing scores, texted me. He's like, "This is the last one." And then I went the second overtime. I texted back with him. I was like, when it was over, I said, I should have just jumped in the car and gone down and watched the overtime. So essentially, Raytown was up most of that game. And then Grain Valley drives down the last one. Caleb Larson, their quarterback, put out his huddle film, or his dad put out his huddle film of the last drive. And hats off to this kid, because in the final drive, he threw 2 balls into the chest of Raytown players. He had 2 that should have been picked, game over. Didn't phase him. He scrambles around, hits a kid streaking in the back of the end zone with no time on the clock. Extra point, good, tie it up. And they go 3 overtimes, and Raytown decides to go for it on the third one, and they stuff them and they get the win. So that proves it's hard to beat a team twice in one season. And, they've beaten Raytown pretty easily the first time around, and they get a Fort Osage team that beat them earlier in the season, 9-8 on a kick. The kicker for Grain Valley knows not to kick it to Lorenzo Finner. He slips, the ball goes right to him. He runs it all the way back to the 2-yard line, and that's how they scored their touchdown in that game. So it's funny because those two teams are close in terms of proximity. They play in the summer. The coaches' staff know each other. Brock Bolt, who coaches at Fort Osage, is a Grain Valley graduate. When they played the regular season game, he was inducted into the Grain Valley Hall of Fame, to which he joked with David Alley, the Grain Valley coach, who did this on purpose, so I wouldn't be able to coach my team. And so they're excited. Both these teams are excited about it. And David Alley said last night, he goes, "We think a lot of them. I'm just not going to like them very much for 3 hours on Friday night."
Well, look, that game was 17-17 going to overtime. They finished 38-37, just a wild 3 overtime finish there. So
one of the reasons why I think college went to the 2-point conversion is because that looked like it was headed to a 5-6 overtime. If Raytown kicks the extra point, that's they might still be playing. Who knows?
And they went for 2?
They went for 2 on the third overtime. So
tried to pull a Kansas.
Yeah.
It sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Up in Class 6, the big class in Missouri, Liberty North took on Park Hill South, and it was a good game for a while. We talked about Park Hill South, I think maybe with a raised eyebrow maybe all year, like, okay, But the schedule hasn't been great. Yeah, you're undefeated, but they proved it. They hung.
No,
Maybe the best team in the city.
Yeah, they hung with Liberty North, and Liberty North's strength is their depth and their physicality, and they forced some turnovers. Park Hill South had some errors in the kicking game, and I told Coach Wilton, I was emailing him, I said, great season. And he's like, yeah, I just picked the wrong time to turn the ball over and have kicking errors. I emailed him back, and I'm like, and that's the wrong team to do that against, because that's what they play. I mean, that's where they start. They look for those things. Greg Jones coach teams look to be so strong in special teams and get turnovers and lead to short fields for their offense. And that's one of their trademarks. And no, they hung with them. And they showed that, that they're probably, when the final rankings come out, I think they deserve to be a top 5 team, with Lee Summit North. And, because I'll be honest with you.
Your only loss is to Liberty North, right?
Yeah. You look at teams that are in the Final Four. CBC, yeah, they're a top 5 team. Lee Summit North, yeah, they're a top 5 team, no matter where they fit. Liberty North, yeah, they're a top 5 team. Troy Buchanan wasn't even ranked in the top 10 when they started. And I'll be honest with you, I don't even know if they deserve to be ranked now. And Francis Howell, who was in the back end of the rankings, I don't know I think Park Hill South beats Troy Buchanan and Francis Howell by 2 or 3 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. I think Ray Peck beats those teams by 2 or 3 touchdowns. I think Liberty might beat those teams by 2 or 3 touchdowns. So I think that if you're Park Hill South, your first year in 6, you got to feel pretty good about what you did. And I think that that's a program that under Coach Wilmus has done a fantastic job of building up. And I think they're going to be it stinks that they're on the same side with Liberty North, who seems like they've got it really going right now. But, hey, you keep putting yourself back in that spot, get to the district final, get to the semifinal, just keep putting yourself back in there and eventually you'll break through.
All right. So we got both Norths from Lee Summit and Liberty going on the road, right, this week.
Yes. That was a Troy Buchanan touchdown as time went out to win that game to make Liberty North have to drive across the state.
But they're on different sides of the bracket. So we could feasibly have Liberty North be Lee Summit North, the state championship game, right?
Yes, very much.
Put your odds at that happening?
I would say Liberty North is probably about an 85 to 90%. I don't think Troy Buchanan can even come close to him. I think it's probably 55-45 CBC.
The CBC, they're still undefeated?
Yes. No, they lost to East St. Louis, which is one of the best teams in the country. They are good, and they have athletes. And Lee Summit North is good, and I think their athletes are comparable. I would say that there's no big talent gap between those two teams. The difference is every practice that Lee Summit North has had this week is a strange new thing that has never happened in their school history. The game on Friday is as far as they've ever been. Right. They've never won a district. They've never come out this far. They've never been in the semifinals. So it's new territory for them. And I'm not saying that it's a positive and a negative in the sense that CBC has been there, done that. The nerves shouldn't get to them. And they're battle tested too. I think that they've got some pretty big flashy names on their resume. But I also think that the bottom of their resume teams are not like Lee Summit North's bottom is not as low as what CBC's bottom in terms of schedule. I think Lee Summit North has played a better overall schedule. They just don't have an East St. Louis on their schedule to say, but they beat Ray Peck twice. Liberty North was a 3-point game, and Blue Valley North
teams, right?
Yeah, Blue Valley North.
You had Lee Summit North beat in overtime, I believe, Blue Valley North, and CBC
when they were undefeated
played Aquinas, and beat them rather easily. But yeah, so I guess that's the closest thing you have to some comparisons there.
Yeah, no, I just think that I think CBC came over here and beat Rockhurst 41-14. And I think that
game too.
I think that people has got a lot of people like, oh, well, they hammered Rockhurst. They're by far. And I'm like, well, I don't know if Lee Summit North doesn't do that to Rockhurst. This is a pretty middle of the road Rockhurst team. It's pretty young and they took their lumps in some games. So no, I think they've got a good chance. They just can't let the moment get too big for them. And I think if they can get a lead, I think that'll be big for them. Their defense is really good. I mean, they shut out a Joplin team that can score. They held Ray Peck. They didn't cover Jaden Dawson on a wheel route, which I think that most people will tell you is a huge mistake. But outside of that, they played a really good game against Ray Peck, a team that Ray Peck that had been scoring to some point. So no, I think there's a chance. And if there is, then I think it'd be great. hey, there might be a chance on the Kansas side too. Lawrence is playing really good football.
They are.
And Free State
Free State
kind of hung with
came
Derby.
all the way back on Derby.
Yeah, almost came all the way back on Derby. So I talked with Coach Bowen yesterday, and I said, hey, we'd love to have 2 6A finals that are all Kansas City teams. Yeah. He's like, oh, I'd like to have that happen too.
Well, you're seeing the impact right away that Bowen's had on Lawrence, and able to get them. I mean, the last time they were this far was, I think, 1995. So that would be cool. And the big class in 6A in Kansas have 4 Kansas City schools playing.
He had a great line. He said that one thing he's learned coaching high school football. I said, well, you're going on the road. Derby's a tough place. He goes, I'll be honest with you. I'd rather go on the road. He's like, when you're home, they go and you don't know what they're doing. And he goes, I've got them on the bus. And he goes, a lot of them get a nap that they need. Yeah. If you're on the bus for an hour, they just kind of relax. And he goes, I'd play everything on the road. I said, well, if you win this one, you're on a bus to Emporia. So that's, your last one will be a bus trip. So no, he's made a great impact. Steve Rampy did a good job of kind of taking that, but they lost Devin Neal and some really good players, but they haven't missed a beat. I mean, they're further down than they were last year. So Clint Bowen has done a fantastic job at Lawrence this year.
All right, well, let's stay in Missouri here to your RE/MAX Big 3 games of the week, and let's work kind of top to bottom, class on down. Fort Osage and Green Valley, we've not talked enough about the Indians of Fort Osage all year long. I apologize. Let's talk about them now, because here they are in the quarterfinals.
Well, they're not sexy. They're physical. They run the ball. They play good defense.
I think a Final 8 berth, that's sexy to me.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and I know Coach Bolt doesn't want me talking about this. There's a thing with Fort Osage. Starting in 2009, every 3 years, they've been in the state championship game. 9, 12, 15, 18.
Really?
So this would be 21. And so it's generally when they have a senior quarterback who has played a couple years. Minnie, I think, is a junior. They would have had a senior. Trey Baker was going to be there, but he transferred to Lee Summit North. His brother, Ty Baker, was the quarterback who led them to the state championship game when they lost in 18. Some guy named Skylar Thompson was when they won it in 15.
Remember him. Steve
McBee in 12. And then totally blanking on the guy in 2009 who was a 2-year starter. So they've got a pretty good formula. They know that they're well aware of the numbers in that sense. And I brought it up and he was like, I know you know that. And I'm like, well, yeah, I broadcast their game in 18 and went and did the whole thing. And they even prophesized that possibly this could happen because I knew that Trey Baker was coming. So no, that's a team that comes back and beats Platte County 22-20 after coming back from down 14 to Staley the week before. Coach Bolt said he goes, I'm glad they know they can do that. I would prefer not to do that this week and come from behind, but both Green Valley and Fort Osage have done that the last 2 weeks. And I think that they're both similar. It's going to be a real physical, tough game. And I think that these two teams are good enough to possibly get into a state championship game. They play the right style of ball at the right time. Because, look at the Olathe South Blue Valley North game a few weeks ago when it got wet and windy.
Oh yeah.
And cold. And Blue Valley North, Henry Martin, as good as anybody, can throw the ball around on the yard on anybody. They totally got shut down by Olathe South, and Olathe South just said, we'll run it, and play defense and get it. So that's the thing. Both these teams are kind of equipped. This game's a toss-up. I've got to pick it later today. I have no idea which direction I'm going to go. And I may not until right there. But no, it's definitely a good game. And I think it's a game that's is already becoming a pretty good rivalry and probably will continue to be.
All right, down to Class 4, it's Smithville at Lincoln Prep. Combined record, I think, is 21-0 between these two teams. This game, as we're recording it right now, we don't know where it's going to be played. Somebody else can get into those weeds. Let's talk about on the field. Smithville, you talk about just kind of like boring, not sexy football. They win. They run the ball, and they get it done defensively. Lincoln Prep, I don't think anybody saw the best version of Lincoln Prep we've ever seen coming this year, but I think this is the best version of Lincoln Prep we've ever seen.
They're a more balanced team, offensively, defensively. But while they have their quarterback is really good, I think his name's Seth, and John Price, the sophomore tailback's really good. They don't have the Howard Browns and Jermaine Hamilton, Jordan, name guys who are D1 guys.
We've
I'm not
talked
saying they're
about
not
that
D1 guys.
before. It's sometimes better just to have consistency throughout and not, the big dogs, the big D1 players.
I think what they've done the last 2 weeks, beating Harrisonville and Nevada, and I think people say, oh, I don't know much about Nevada. Nevada's a really solid, good football team that plays down in Southwest Missouri against some good teams. And that was a good win for them because they kind of just handled them.
Yeah,
took care of their business. And that's the thing. They're not lucky. I mean, they played Center tough a few weeks ago, and they got up on Center, and Center tried to come back, and that was a good win for them. They've beaten Cardinal Ritter. They beat Maryville. All teams that are still playing. And Cardinal Ritter could be in the semifinals, and Maryville could be in the semifinals very easily. So, those are teams that are good teams. And, Harrisonville had struggled at times, but they housed them. So it doesn't, I mean, that's what you should do to a team that's not playing very well. And they beat a good Nevada team. Smithville, though, I think that everybody who's in Class 5 or Class 3 is thanking God Smithville is not in that class with them this year. I mean, because I think Smithville's good enough to win in Class 5.
Class 5, yeah.
I mean,
that's how dominant they've been this season.
Yeah, and so, they're an experienced team that was a minute and a half away from going to the state championship game last year against the team that won it. MICDS is on their side of the bracket if they were to get past Lincoln Prep. They're probably the second best team. I think Smithville's the best team. I've been saying it since we started the year, and I'm not changing anything. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But no, it's definitely going to be. I think it'll be a good game. I think Lincoln Prep's going to play tough, but I just think Smithville's the team. So I'm picking it right now. I'm picking Smithville.
They've given up 64 points all season long. Smithville in 10 games.
Yes.
Congrats to Raytown South, who somehow scored 14 of them in one game.
I think on the freshman team.
Yeah, exactly. You never know, especially those.
Because I checked in to find that final score, and it was 50-something to nothing. And then it was 14 points scored in the last 2 minutes of the game.
I guarantee you, Smithville's got starters have only given up this many points.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure. So
yeah. All right, and then last but not least. In Missouri, it's going to be Class 3 here. St. Pius on the road to Pleasant Hill. Why is that? St. Pius is the 10-1 record. Pleasant Hill 7-4. Explain to everybody why that's at Pleasant Hill.
Well, when you get out of districts, the seeds go away, and then it goes down to how many times you've hosted. And Pius hosted all their district games, so they were probably going on the road anyway. And it depends on. And then if you hosted the same top than the odd numbered, you're top of the bracket host, which is why Lincoln Prep is fighting to stay at home.
Yeah.
And host at their school because they've earned the right to host. So here's the deal. Pleasant Hill is going to play their first home playoff game of the season. They were on the road all 3 weeks and got 3 good wins, and they are at home until they would get in a bus and go to Columbia if they go to the state championship game. And I think St. Pius is very good, and they've got a great defense, and Anthony Simone Jr., their coach, and his staff has done a fantastic job. Jack Moss, their quarterback, is really good. Robbie Sharp, the tailback, is really good. Pleasant Hill is as hot as anybody, and they can score on anybody. If you're St. Pius, you've played basically the teams that were in your conference in the district. It's same again. You've beaten them again. You've taken care of your business. St. James is the only team that's played. But you're looking at a team that looks a lot like St. James offensively. And Easton Rowe, their quarterback, is a dual threat guy, and he puts up points. And Pleasant Hill has been in every game, and they've beaten Boonville, Odessa. They have 5 losses, but they play in a tough conference. And with Center, and they lost to Oak Grove the first time. It came back and beat them the second time. Pleasant Hill is as dangerous a team. You rarely get a team that wins a district from a 5 seed, and you go, oh yeah, they've got a chance. Usually it's a funky district, and they maybe they were middling a lot, like a Miege would have been if they were in like an 18 district. But Pleasant Hill has been sneaky good all season, and in every game they've been in, even their losses. So they're dangerous. They're dangerous. And I guarantee you, and I know that coaching staff at Pius is telling their kids, do not look at the record.
Yeah,
do not
absolutely.
Look at the record.
And speaking of defenses, Pius, by the way, if you take out that one Kansas game against St. James, has given up 50 points all season long to its Missouri opponents this year. So, should be a good one. That'll be our game of the week, by the way, on KSHB 41. They flooded the inbox. 85% of the vote, almost 600 votes, went to St. Pius and Pleasant Hill. And that's how you usually see it, right? Those smaller schools, they don't get all the love from all the TV stations and all the websites every week. So when they're up for a game of the week, I mean, I just picture everybody in the town like going to the post office to cast their vote.
Yeah,
you can do it on a computer or phone or whatever, but that's what I picture. All right, over at Kansas, let's start in 6A, Blue Valley West and Blue Valley Northwest. It's a rematch of a game about 4 weeks ago, I think. Yeah. That Northwest won like 21-0 or something like that.
Yeah, it was
not a blowout, but Northwest defense actually kind of came to play in that one.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be, it's going to be who can establish the line of scrimmage. I think is going to determine this game. And I think Blue Valley West is pretty good there, but Northwest, every time Northwest, I don't think anybody's doubted them. I mean, but they're kind of in that as this group. The first time they've been in the semifinals since '99, so they haven't done this in a long, long time. And there was kind of a show me type attitude. They've passed every test. They had their game against St. Thomas Aquinas, coming off a big win over Blue Valley North. Yeah. They get down a couple touchdowns to Aquinas.
Been the only blip on the radar there.
Yes, and that's a very easy trap game, and that has happened to plenty of teams along the way who've gone on to win championships.
Really, Aquinas isn't even a trap game. I mean, they're proving that they're one of the best teams.
It was a dangerous game against an Aquinas team that had lost 4 in a row. That was much better than that. And you're coming off of beting your rival, and you turn the ball over a couple times,
right? I mean,
yeah, you got to play flex mode. There's a lot of factors there. So no, I think Blue Valley West is good enough to get this win. I'm probably leaning towards Blue Valley Northwest in this one, just because I think they've got a little bit more weapons, and they've kind of proven it just a little bit more than West. But I'll tell you right now, for some reason I'm the one who makes the picks. I've put Blue Valley West in our picks, I don't know, 8 times this year. I've picked them right 1 time. So whichever way I go is probably you go the other way on that.
So the Jags are hoping that you
yes, so the Jags are
all on the Huskies.
Yes, that's what they're hoping for.
Nice, good deal. All right, down in 5A, it's St. Thomas Aquinas and Mill Valley. And how about just kind of a round of applause for those two teams for the 7th year in a row, Dion? These two teams are facing each other in the 5A playoffs, and the winner will go play for a state championship game. 7th year in a row. That streak will end after this year because Aquinas is going down to 4A. But I can't remember a run like that of 2 teams together. You've seen the Miages, you've seen some Missouri team. Even back in the day with, Blue Springs and Rockhurst. They didn't always that consistent.
Yeah. They didn't always meet in the playoffs every year. Sometimes there was a couple of times they were in the same district. Thank you, Misha. But no, it's been a crazy thing.
And 6 of those times have been in the semifinals. Once in the quarters, 6 in the semis. It's just odd that they've never been on the same side of the bracket, really, and they've met so late. Because in Kansas, you like this year, Aquinas been teams, but Aquinas was a 7 seed, right?
Yeah. It was a roll. And it came down to like 3 things on the last.
They could have met week 2. Yeah. Yes. It was very close. Yeah.
No, I think this is, last year, Mill Valley really dominated this game. And I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think it's a little more evenly matched.
Yeah.
I like Mill Valley. I just think that they've kind of stepped up and done everything they can. But as we just talked about Blue Valley Northwest, do not get behind 2 touchdowns to Aquinas. Mm-hmm. Because you won't get the ball. They will do exactly what they will dictate what the game will be at that point. And they are as good at that as any team in the look, Greg Jones can dictate and Liberty North will dictate what they want to do to you, but not the way Randy Dreiling and his crew do. When they get the lead and they want to do what they want to do, they are masters of dictating how the game is going to go.
Well, absolutely. It's like when you're playing Aquinas, it's like the first quarter is the biggest quarter. Just like you said, if you get behind, they're going to throw 8-minute drives at you, right?
Yes.
But if you can blitz them in a hurry and run out to a 20-0 lead, well, it might take them a while to get down and get those touchdowns, and you're more in the driver's seat. Now, it's a unique style, and this is a fun game every year. In those 7 games, you've had Aquinas win big, you've had Mill Valley win big a couple times, and then you've had some classics like the one 2 years ago at Aquinas, an overtime game. I think this one is more in that ilk.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's going to be, and it's cliched, but it's going to be a lot dictated by the offensive and defensive lines and how they do against each other.
And that's how they win. Those 2 teams, those are the most physical This will be the most physical game Mill Valley plays. This will be the most physical game Aquinas plays.
And I think that bodes well for whoever wins going into the next week. I think Mays is really good. I think Capen's is pretty good, but I don't think that they bring physicality like maybe a Wichita Northwest or speed that Wichita Northwest has brought the last few years. So I think it's if you're on the other side, you're probably thinking, well, if we get there, we got to be ready to strap it on. So that's going to be a really good game.
No, can't wait in a lot of ways. That one on Friday night, and then last but not least in Kansas. Speaking of rivalry games, now we have Bishop Miege and St. James for the second time this year.
Yes.
St. James really dominated the first time around. The Stags get another shot at them.
Yeah, and Miege is playing a little better, but I don't know if they can get into the 30s against the St. James defense, because I think St. James is going to get into the 30s. They have in their 7-game winning streak. They've easily gotten there. I just don't know. I don't know if Miege can do it. I think that they're going to come out. They're going to have a good game plan. I mean, last year it was an overtime game, but earlier this year was saying a lot about. It showed a lot, and those teams continued to be what they were coming out of that. Miege has looked a little better once they got into the playoffs, but I think St. James is on the verge of having another title in their hands. So, it's kind of weird because it was always on somebody to beat Miege. Now it's on Miege to beat St. James. I mean, they've got to go.
The underdog role for the first time in these playoffs.
Yes. The little plunky Bishop Miege, if they could only break through and get some good things to happen for him. Okay. So no, it says a lot about their program and their kids that they aren't uber talented like they've been in the past. They're a little more, like a regular old football team, and they're still able to kind of go. And, some kids just, when you win a lot, you get those extra practices and those kids think, oh, well, it's the weekend before Thanksgiving. We need to be playing in the semifinal. And they, we know we need to be there. So, and, going back even before they went on the run in 4A, they made a 5A state championship game in 2011, and we're in semis and places like that too, when even they're in 5A. So they know what they need to do. And now St. James is kind of in that mold. They're kind of in that, okay, this is the time of year. So like I said, I think St. James is going to get that win, but I think it'll be a good game for most of it, but I feel like St. James has kind of been this, okay, we'll let you play, but then midway through the third and fourth quarter, that's when they really kind of pull away and put games away.
All right, let's take a look at a few other teams playing to get the round of 4 in Missouri, kind of the outskirts of the coverage area. You got Richmond playing, I believe, at Maryville.
Yes, on Saturday.
And Lafayette County's playing. You got East Buck playing. Am I missing anybody here?
That's it right there in Class 2 and Class 1. East Buck and Penny are playing on Saturday. Lafayette County is hosting Bowling Green.
Where's Bowling Green?
Up northeast Missouri.
Outside of Kentucky, and then there's one in Ohio. I didn't know there was one in Missouri.
The Bowling Green, Missouri, and you're a wrestling guy, I think the wrestler Kane is from, or you have been a wrestling
that kind of wrestling, yes. I see.
Yes. Kane, the WWE star, I think is from Bowling Green, Missouri.
No way, that'd be great.
I think one of those monster guys, either Kane or I don't know, is from Bowling Green. But Lafayette County, I think, is going to get that win. I think Lafayette County's got a good chance because they're on the opposite side of the bracket from Lamar, Maryville, and Richmond, just the way they kind of went. So I think they've got a good chance to get to the state championship game. They're playing really well. Maryville, Richmond's a rematch of the district championship game last year, won by Maryville. Richmond is a year older. I mean, they were all juniors last year. Keyshawn Elliott is as good a football player as you'll find in the city. He can play for anybody, and he's their quarterback. And at one point last week against St. Michael, he had 6 carries for 200 change and 4 touchdowns.
Wow.
Yeah. So he made mincemeat of St. Michael, and, cold night, my guy, Ryan Edwards, was covering it for me, calls me at halftime. And I go, technically, if you can park your car and see the field for the second half, you can sit in your car and watch the second half and then go interview the coach afterwards. 70-14 in a district final game. So yeah, no. And then the East Buck, I said, East Buck and Penny, East Buck, good win over UA last week. They jumped out on them and forced UA to make mistakes. And that's what they did. And University Academy had a couple interceptions in the end zone and turned the ball over, and East Buchanan's, their tailback is really good. They leaned on him, and they will again this week too. So,
by the way, Kane, aka Glenn Jacobs, is from Bowling Green, Missouri. Went to Northeast Missouri State. Learned something every day on Snap Tackle Pod. I appreciate that. Nice job there, Dion.
Yes, and the only reason I know that is I knew a guy who was from Hannibal. Who was
Hannibal's got a more famous resident.
Yes, he was not WWE by any means, but he knew that stat and partied on me when I was like Bowling Green. We were talking about Bowling Green is not this isn't basketball where every year, and I have covered high school sports. Not saying I've covered basketball for 30 years, but I've been aware and been a part of high school sports in Missouri for 30 plus years. And every year we get to the Final Four. And now that there's going to be 6 classes, it'll be even worse. Every year we get to the Final Four, and I'm looking at the boys and girls. I'm like, what? Where? Some town in this state.
Nice.
Never heard of it.
Nice.
And have no concept. A couple years ago, Kennett, Missouri, when they played Odessa in the semifinals, I was like, what?
I remember looking up Kennett.
Yeah. So
that's way southeast, right?
Yes, that's southeast. That's
I got all the towns down. I've never lived outside of Kansas. But I'm like you, there's always a Missouri town that springs up.
Yeah, there's a ton of small towns. I mean, Missouri's a bigger state than Kansas. And there's a lot more little towns dotted the thing. And when Kennett's the one that when I was looking for somebody to cover the game, I was looking at St. Louis, and then I started looking around and going, well, if I know somebody in Memphis, it was actually closer to find like a stringer out of Memphis to do that. But no, it's there's some small towns out there. Hayti is another one in Class 1.
Hayti. Not Haiti. There's so many Missouri towns that are like Nevada, right?
Not Nevada.
They look like other places, but pronounced differently.
Yeah.
Versailles, yes. Also, my wife's from Milan, Kansas. Milan. Not
Milan. Yeah, there's a Milan, Missouri, too, up north. That is the home of one Greg Oder, former Blue Springs South.
Oh, that's awesome.
Head coach, 3-time state champion now. I don't know, just coaching some defense at some Catholic school in the city.
The Catholic school in
just a Catholic school in the city, some school in the city. So
I quickly here, we've gone way long, but you know what? It's semifinals/quarterfinal week. We'll go long here. Give me some. What are we thinking here? Simone awards here. But we narrowed it down to like a Final Four-ish as far as candidates go.
I'd say Jet Deneen. I'd say Mikey Pauley put himself in a great position after last week's game. Henry Martin's still part of the conversation. I think Trey Baker's a big part of the conversation from Lake Summit North. Wintrick Williams at Liberty had a really good year. Sam Van Dyne from Liberty North will be a part of the conversation. So those are kind of some of the big guys that really are there right now. We'll see what the next week or so brings. I think Sean Carroll at Aquinas is definitely part of the conversation.
Really good year running the ball.
Really good year. And I mean, if they go beat Mill Valley and win a state championship, and if they do that, he will probably add 300 to 400 yards and 5 to 6 touchdowns to his total.
Which is amazing considering Tank never won it. Tank Young.
No, I know.
And they shared a back.
It's not about Tony Temple never won one either. So sometimes it's about who's in your thing. So those are the guys right there that are probably, that we're going to be working on the ballot in the next week, and that'll be out to the coaches over Thanksgiving break. And that'll be coming together pretty quick. But no, and there's some new exciting things too around the Simone Awards that we'll tease right now is getting ready to announce a partnership. They're getting ready to announce a title sponsor. And I'll just say if you follow PrepsKC, it's a title sponsor that will be familiar to you. It's one of our founding sponsors that have partnered with the Simone Awards and the new website and year-round content for it. Really get to know the Simone Awards even more, past winners, things like that. So that's going to be exciting. That'll be right as we lead up to the ceremony and the announcing the winners. And also, I think that we could probably go ahead and say that some changes that we did last year are going to stay. We're hopefully going to go back to the ceremony.
Yeah, so we're going to be announcing
41.
We're going to be announcing all the other 4 awards, basically the Fontana, the Bell, the Buchanan, and the Taylor on KSHB 41 in the days leading up to the Simone Award, which will be on December 7th, I believe.
Yeah, 7th.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
and the plan is to have it back in the school this year of the winner. And then we will stream that live on KSHB 41 on our platforms, on our OTT, basically. And then we'll package that up into like a 30-minute special that'll air throughout the schedule on KMCI, 38th The Spot. And we're going to have a couple airings on KSHB during December. I think one's going to be on December 26th. So we're excited about that one. We're like day after Christmas. That's a Sunday, I believe. Everybody's home.
Yeah.
Just kind of, hey, want to turn on some Money Awards? There you go. And then, of course, it'll be there on our OTT platform for for a long, long time. Anytime people can watch it. So we're excited about the partnership with the Simone Awards and kind of having it back this year.
And they're doing
a lot of the things we did last year during COVID.
Well, and having the 4 awards announced separately never seemed like something to do. And we did it last year. And I thought we thought it was kind of cool.
The fun. The reaction. Lineman gets a day all to himself.
Yes. And, Brandon Martin and Tongi, the video of that's right up there with the girl from Alaska winning the Olympics or school going crazy. I mean, that's fun. And they get to share with their family and friends a little more relaxed situation instead of sitting there and standing up in front of 1,500 people, 1,480 that they don't know. And having to do that, and even having to walk over and talk to you, in front of the entire crowd instead of just doing a Zoom call with you and I. So it's definitely one of those. So no, looking forward to it. It's going to be an exciting week, and the next 3 weeks are going to be fast and furious, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
I was going to say, we're just a couple weeks away from state championship games. Means we're just a few weeks away from the Simone Awards, and we're going to wrap this show up before it bleeds into the state championship games.
Yeah, I was going to say, or my radio show that I'm going to have to
Awesome. Dion, we appreciate the time. For Dion, I'm Mick. We'll see you next time right here on the Snap Tackle Pod.